In this lecture, we're going to see how we can generate random numbers in our C++ programs. And you might be asking, what does this have to do with arrays that we are learning in this chapter? Well, we are going to be using this for a practical application we're going to be doing in the next lecture, and I don't want you to be wondering how the hell did I come up with this random numbers. So we're going to explain that first, and then move on and do that cool example in the next lecture. And as a benefit, you're going to be able to use these same things in a lot of applications that use random numbers for whatever it is you are trying to do. Some of those applications might be things like dice. For example, if you are trying to build a dice application, you're going to be needing to generate a random number between 1 and 6, and you're going to be generating it and really simulating how a real dice works in real life. But enough with examples. Let's see how C++ allows us to generate random numbers. And today we're going to be looking at std_rand. This is a function that is built into the C++ standard library, and if you call it, it's going to give you a random number that is going to be between 0 and randmax. And randmax is going to be compiler dependent, so different compilers might give you a different value for randmax, but we can be sure that it's going to be a large random positive number. That's the guarantee we have here. So if we call that function, we're going to get that number and print it out. We call the function again and we store the result in random num here. If we print it out, we're going to see another number which is random. And some of you will be curious and want to know what randmax is on your compiler. You can run code like this. We're going to print it out and say randmax, and it is going to give you your value. For my compiler here on my system, it is this value, 32,767, and it may be different on your compiler. You might be saying, okay, this is cool and fine, but what if I want to constrain my random numbers to a range? In most cases, you will want to generate numbers in a certain range. For example, if you are doing a dice, the number you'll want will need to be between 1 and 6. But let's say we want a range between 1 and 10. How can we do that? We will need to take this number we get here and really constrain it to a smaller range, which is not between 0 and randmax. And we have already learned about it. It is the modulus operator. If you remember, that operator is going to take the first operand, it's going to divide the second operand, and the remainder of that division is going to be the result of the modulus operator. So here what we want to do is to constrain our random numbers to a range between 0 and 10. And this is inclusive. 0 is going to be included and 10 is going to be included. So numbers we will get will be between 0 and 10. What we're going to do here is take whatever we get from std_rand, which is going to be a random number between 0 and randmax, which is really large. And we're going to modulus with that with 11. And the result of that will be something between 0 and 10, because the remainder of this division of std_rand to 11 can only be between 0 and 10. And try to think about that. And this is going to give us a number that is constrained to this range here that we want. And here we can try and generalize and say that the second operand to this modulus operator is going to control the upper bound of your random numbers range. For example, here we are using 11. This is going to force our range to be between 0 and 10. If we want, for example, numbers between 0 and 30, we would do a modulus with 31, and that would constrain the numbers we get between 0 and 30. So the remainder can only be between 0 and the second operand minus 1, if I can generalize it like this. But try to understand this in your own way, and you're going to be using this all over the place. Okay, now that this technique is in your hands, we can go down here and print 30 random numbers, for example, that are going to be between 0 and 10. And we're going to be getting them if we print them out like this. But this is not enough. And if you want the range to start from 1, what you're going to do, you're going to control the upper bound to whatever it is you want, and you're going to add where you want this to start from. So if we take what we have here in parentheses, it's going to give us numbers between 0 and 14. because modulus 15, the result can only be between 0 and 14. That range of 0 and 14, if we add 1, and this is going to give us a range between 1 and 15, and this is how we can print the numbers between 1 and 15. So you can really use what you add to control the lower bound, and the second operand to the modulus operator to control the upper bound of your random number range. And if you understand this, you'll be ready to generate any range of random numbers you'll need in your C++ applications. This is all cool and fine, but std_rand really has a problem. Each time you run the program, it's going to give you the same sequence of numbers. So for example, if you had generated 3 random numbers and it gave you 1, 7, and 12, if you run the program for the second time, it's going to give you 1, 7, and 12. You run it for the third time, it's going to give you 1, 7, and 12. And this is a problem. You want the numbers to be a bit more random across program runs. And the problem had to do with the seed that std_rand is using to generate its numbers. And the seed is really like a hint you tell to the compiler, give me different numbers every time I run this program. And a seed is something you tell to your program to tell it to do something different every time you run it. It's really like you ask a person, tell me your favorite fruit, and they say apple. You ask them again, tell me your favorite fruit, they say apple again. If you ask them 10 times, they are going to tell you apple every time. But if you want them to give you a different answer, you're going to help them out a little bit. And you're going to say, for example, tell me something you like that is a fruit. Then they are going to say apple. Tell me something you like that is an animal. And then maybe they're going to say dog. Tell me something that you like to drink, for example, and then they're going to say water. So in every question you ask, you give them some piece of information that makes sure that they don't give you the same answer as they did the last time you asked this question. And that's what a seed is in our C++ program. So the way we give a seed to our program, we're going to use what we call std_rand. This S stands for seed, I think. And the way it's going to do, it's going to randomize the answers based on std times 0 here. And std times 0 is going to give us the time since January 1st, 1970 at this time here. So this seed of ours is going to change every second. And if you run your program between different seconds, you're going to get different random numbers if you have put this line somewhere in your program. I can't go really further to explain this because that would take me into a lot of mathematical details I don't want to go into. We just want to get random numbers. So make sure you put this seed number in your program and you're going to get random numbers across program runs. Okay, so if we do something like this with proper seeding, so we're going to put std_run somewhere at the start of our main function, and we try to generate random numbers like we've been doing all along, we're going to get different random numbers across program runs. Okay, this is really all there is to generating random numbers in your C++ programs. Now we're going to head over to Visual Studio Code and see this in action. Okay, here we are in our working directory. We're going to grab the template files from the template project here, and we're going to put them in place. The current project is generating random numbers. We're going to do this pretty fast, and we're going to open the folder for the current project. So what we're going to do, we're going to set up a variable which is going to be an integer, and we're going to call this random num, and we are going to assign the result of std_rand. You see that we have this function here. Even Visual Studio Code is giving us a hint. So if we try to print it out, this is going to give us a number between 0 and randmax. We have seen that in the slide. And this is a thing that is defined in the C++ standard library, and it's going to give us a large number, which is positive. So if we bring up the terminal, let's do that, and we build with GCC, the build should go through. And let's bring this up a little bit. We're going to clear and we're going to run Rooster, and you see that we get a 41. Let's try to run this again and see what we get. You see that we are getting the same number every time we run the application. Let's try and run this again. So we're going to grab this line of code here and put that below to generate another number. And we're going to run this. This is going to work. It's going to give us another number. Let's build. We're going to build with GCC, and the build is going to be good. We're going to clear run rooster. This is going to give us 2 numbers. If we run again, it's going to give us the same numbers. It doesn't really matter how many times you run this. It's going to give you the same sequence of random numbers. And this is the problem we saw in the slides. Don't worry, we will solve this, but we're going to learn these things in steps. Now that you have seen how you can use std_rand, let's try and generate a lot of numbers using a loop. The way we can do that, we can say for size t. You already know how to use loops. We're going to take advantage of that. We're going to initialize this. We're going to put in our test. And let's say we want to get 20 random numbers. And we're going to ++ I to increment. And inside, we're going to do the same thing here and print the random number out. We can do that. And we're going to bring this to the right a little bit. And we're going to click on this file icon here to close this pane so that we have some more breathing room here. So what this program is going to do, it's going to loop 20 times. Each time it's going to generate a random number. It's going to store that in random num, and we're going to print that out. And that's going to be in addition to what we had done before here. And I think we should really comment this out so that we don't have some noise output that we don't expect. And we can go down and declare our own random num variable for whatever we want to do here. And we're not going to initialize it because it's going to be initialized in the loop here. So we can say int random num and put a semicolon here. This is going to be enough for our purposes here. Let's try and build this with GCC as we always do. And we're going to clear and run rooster. You're going to see that we're going to get 20 numbers. And we should put the index to make this easier to read. This is going to be much easier to read. And we're going to see that at each iteration, we generate a different random number. So let's clear. This is going to be much easier to read. And if we try and build this, we're going to build with GCC as usual. The build is going to be good. Let's clear and run rooster. We're going to get random number 1 through random number 19, and we can see from which iteration each number is coming from. So these are different random numbers. But the problem again is that if we run rooster again, you see that we're getting the same number, 54, 36. If we run this again, that's what we're going to get. And this is really not that random. We would like these random numbers to be in different sequences at least when we run our program multiple times. And we're going to see a solution to that. But before we do, we need to constrain these numbers to a range that we really want. Sometimes we don't want to get numbers this large. For example, if we want a range between 0 and 10, we should be able to do that. So what we're going to do is comment this out and say what this was all about. So generate random numbers in a loop. I think that's what we were doing here. And we're going to comment this out. And we are going to go down and say int random num. And we want to assign a value to this that will be between 0 and 10. The number that we generate randomly should be between 0 and 10. And we want to make sure this is what we get. So the way we do that, we can use our modulus operator and control the upper bound of the random numbers that we get. And we want the numbers to be between 0 and 10, so we can modulus what we get from std_rand with 11. And that's going to control our range between 0 and 10. We have seen an explanation to that in the slides. If this is not clear, please look back and you're going to see an explanation to that. What we're going to do now is std_rand. We're going to get our number and we're going to modulus that with 11. Now we're going to put our semicolon here. And if we print this out, we're going to get our random numbers that are between 0 and 11. Let's make sure that's actually the case. What we're going to do is copy the code we had before because we don't want to write this loop again. And we're going to loop for 20 times. And each time we're going to generate a random number that is between 0 and 11. And we're going to modulus with 11 to make sure of that. If we print this out, we're going to get our output here. So let's put a few spaces here so that we have some breathing room. And we are going to build again with GCC. Let's bring this up and clear and run rooster. Now you see that our numbers are really between 0 and 10. We have nothing that is over 10. And this is what we want. If you run this again, you're going to get the same sequence. This is really not interesting, but we're going to solve this in a minute. If you want this to start from 1, you're going to add a number that is going to make this pad to the location where you want to start from. So if we want to start from a 1, for example, we might do something like int random num, and the best place to start is the upper bound. So we want numbers to be between 1 and 10, for example. So we should use a range between 0 and 9, and if we pad and add the 1, we're going to get between 1 and 10. I hope this makes sense. So what we're going to do is std_rand and modulus with the 10. That's going to give us a range between 0 and 9, and if we add the 1, we're going to get a range between 1 and 10. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to do std_rand, and we're going to modulus with 10, and we're going to add a 1. Okay, this is going to give us a range between 1 and 10. Let's say that, and these ranges are inclusive, so the 1 and the 10 will be included in the range here. Okay, so we're going to comment out whatever we had before, and let's say what it was, and we're going to comment this out. And we are going to copy the code here because we don't want to really type this out again. And we're going to adapt it to our purposes here. And what we're going to do, we're going to modulus with 10 inside here and add the 1 to pad this to the range of 1 through 10. And if we run this program, I hope that's what we're going to get. Let's try this out. We're going to build with GCC, and we're going to clear. The build is good. If we run Rooster, that's what we get. Notice that we don't have 0 in here. It's numbers between 1 and 10. And this is all cool and nice, but I don't like the fact that we have to always have the same sequence of numbers. This is really not random to me. I want the numbers to be random even across program runs. So if I run it for the first time, I want to get a different sequence. And then if I run it again, I want to get another sequence and something like that. And the way to do that is to use seeds. We have seen that we can set a seed by adding a special line at the start of our C++ program. And we have seen that we can do that with std_srand. And we're going to say std time. And we're going to pass in a 0 to give it the time since 1970 January and at 0 at night. I think that's the time. And you see that we have a problem with this std time function. I did this on purpose to really help you see this. This function is not available, and we need to find what we need to include to get access to it. Not to worry here, we can hop over to our favorite search engine and say std time. And if we run this, we're going to get a reference documentation from CPP reference. You can use any reference you want, but CPP reference works better for me. So you see that to use this, you need to include ctime. I'm going to come back to Visual Studio Code and include that. And we're going to say ctime. And if we wait, this squiggly line should go away, and this should work. Now, this is going to be our seed. We are basically telling this program to give us a different sequence of random numbers every time we run it. And the randomness is going to be based on the time at which we run this program, and that time is going to be got from std time here that we have inside. I won't really go any deeper and try to explain this more because that would take me into math details I'm not willing to get into in this course. For now, we're just going to be happy using this. And if you want your program to give you different numbers between program runs, use this line here and you're going to be fine. What we're going to do is build this program and see that we have a different sequence each time we run it. And that's going to give us the random numbers that we really want. So what we're going to do, the build is good. We're going to clear and run Rooster. You're going to see that we end in 479. Let's try and run again. Now we end in 993. We're going to run it again. We end in 148. And this is really cool. This is much more random than what we had before. And this is really all I had to share in this lecture. We have a way we can generate random numbers across program runs, and we have the tools to control the range to a range that we want. If you want, you can go from 1 to 25. If you want, you can go from 0 to 13. You can really do anything you want with these tools here. We're going to stop here in this lecture. In the next one, we're going to actually do a program that is going to tell you your fate. Go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.